Hey, welcome back to my kitchen, the best I ever had. Today I'm going to make a nice marinara sauce for some raviolis. I buy store-bought raviolis. I like the Italian style. I know you can make them, they're probably better, but we eat too many of them, so I'm not going to make them. You're going to need a nice saucepan. You're going to need a good spoon. You're going to need a cutting board. You're going to need a blender to puree up your tomatoes. Today I'm using Cento Italian style tomatoes. I'll be using 2 cans. Gonna start out with a little bit extra virgin olive oil. I'm not going to use a whole lot because in this recipe I use fresh pancetta. I'm going to use about 6 pieces of these in my base, so all that fat will break down, we'll get the flavor. I'm going to use a shallot onion for flavor. I'm going to use a fresh carrot to get some sweetness. Of course, you're going to need some garlic. I got some fresh basil. I got some fresh oregano. And I'm going to use a good vino in my sauce here. I forgot to show you earlier, we also are going to use a little bit of good high quality kosher salt in our sauce. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. What I've done here is I took my pancetta, I laid it out. I'm going to roll it up to make it easier to dice up. If you don't like pancetta, you could use prosciutto or you could use bacon. What we're trying to do is get the flavor of the fat out of this for our sauce. And I'm going to try getting it as small as I can, because what this is going to do is it's going to break down in the pan, and eventually as it's cooking it'll incinerate into where we just have our flavors from it. It's kind of tough to cut through, but just go through this for a little bit here. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to melt it down into our sauce. And this is pretty much all you need to do to it. Now I'm going to take my virgin olive oil. I'm going to put a little bit over here in my pan. Again, I'm not using a whole lot, just a little tiny bit in there to coat the bottom, because I'm going to get a lot of fat out of that pancetta. I transferred my pancetta into my pan with a little bit of oil. I cleaned off my cutting board. Now I'm going to take the carrot and I'm going to slice it really thin. Remember, whenever you're cutting with a very sharp knife, make a claw in your hand so you don't cut off your finger. You rest it against this. You notice I'm not doing a whole lot of talking right now because I'm trying to concentrate on my fingers so that I don't cut one of them off. When I get to the end, I just set that aside. It's not worth cutting my finger for. And I'm going to take these and I'm just going to cut them in a little bit smaller pieces again. The carrot is going to add a sugary flavor to the sauce, and it's going to melt away as bruschetta cooks down. I'm not going to add the garlic in right away, because if I add the garlic in now while the carrots are cooking down and the bruschetta is cooking down, I'll end up burning the garlic and it'll ruin my whole sauce. Okay, so we transferred our carrots over to our pot with the pancetta. Now we're going to take our shallot onion and we're going to get that all diced up and put it in our sauce. The best way I found to cut an onion is to take the side that comes out of the ground and makes your eyes water, and cut that and just get rid of it. And then what I like to do is take all north, south, north, south, north, south, north, south. I learned this technique from watching an Emerald video many years ago. Now when you get that, just do a couple of slices like this, a couple of slices like that. Then again, you make your claw. And you can cut very close, and this way it avoids a lot of the tears you get when you often cut onions because of the juices coming up in the air. So when I get down to the end like that, I'm going to show you another neat little trick so you don't waste any onions. See how fast that was? nice fine cuts. You take your knife and you do this, cut some grooves in it. Just kind of go around and keep working your way up. This way you don't waste anything. You get to the end, you can get one more cut that way. Now I got very little waste. Okay, we've put our diced shallops inside the pan with the carrots and the bruschetta and the oil in there. I'm going to put that on the stove in a few minutes here, but first I want to get my garlic cut up. Even though I'm not adding it in right now, I want it to be prepared. I don't like that part of my garlic. I like to cut it off, get rid of it. If you're not comfortable slicing garlic or you can't cut it real thin like this, you can always use a garlic press, but maybe I'm old school. I just kind of prefer this method here. As you can see, when you get good at it, you can get through it pretty quick. It doesn't take all that long. Now that I've got all my garlic sliced up, I don't want to put them in my sauce like that, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue to chop them down a little bit finer. Now I'm not going to add all this garlic in my sauce at one time. I'm going to add a little bit to the base, get a little bit of flavor in the base, and I'm going to add my pureed tomatoes in it and wait for them to start getting a little bit of heat in them from the stove, and then I'll add them in as I'm cooking my sauce. That way I can get some layers of flavor in there. The sauce only takes about an hour to cook when you're making this amount of it. So I got my garlic chopped up the way I want it. I'm going to set this aside, get my board cleaned up, and then I'm going to begin to cut my fresh basil and fresh oregano. Okay, so today for my sauce I'm using fresh basil. As you can see, it's a very leafy ingredient here, so I like to break the thick stem off. There's no flavor in the stems. And since I'm adding my fresh basil in my sauce, at the same time I'm adding my fresh oregano, I'm going to mix them together. I don't like the dry pieces. I take them out. It takes a little bit of time here, so I just simply set that and I pull these pieces off and I make a big pile here, and then when I get a big pile together, I'm going to go and dice it all up in small tiny pieces here. Okay, so I got my fresh basil all pulled apart and my oregano, and I'm just simply going to dice them together here. Nothing fancy to do in this. Keep your hands on top so your fingers stay in place. Keep flipping and rolling and cutting. There's nothing like the smell of fresh herbs when you're making your sauces. I suppose if you don't have access to fresh herbs, or you're just in a hurry, you could use dehydrated herbs out of a jar, but you won't have the same high quality flavor in your sauce that you'll have using the fresh ingredients. And that's pretty much true with all ingredients. Anytime you're cooking, the more freshness you can use from your local markets, the higher quality your flavors are going to be. And again, I won't be adding this in until I have all my tomatoes in my pan and my bruschetta and shallot onion and carrots have all been reduced down, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute here. I'm almost done with this. You can see it's starting to become a small. And that's basically the consistency I'm trying to get with this here. So we'll set this aside, and when it's time we'll put it inside of our sauce. Okay, so I've got my shallot, my carrot, and my pancetta in here with the oil, and I'm going to turn the heat on. It's going to be on about a medium for right now. I got to get it started. You'll notice I set all my ingredients over here so I can reach them. My pureed tomatoes, my vino, the salt, the oregano, and basil, and my garlic. So this is going to have to cook down for about 5 to 7 minutes, because what I want this to do is to pretty much reduce into a liquid. So that's why I got my heat kind of high, and when it gets to the end of its reduction, that's when I'll add some of my garlic in there. So for right now, get your heat on and let that just start to build up heat and start reducing. Okay, so I've been cooking this down for about 7 minutes. I've reduced all the fat on the pancetta. I still have a little ways to cook it, but now it's time to add my garlic. I'll reach over here, and I'm going to use about that much of my garlic in. And I'm going to mix that around, and I'm going to let this go for about a minute here, and then I'm going to add in some vino and kick up the heat, and that'll help reduce the rest of the carrots and scallop onion. Okay, so we've added our garlic, and we've been cooking this down for about 2 minutes, and you can really start smelling the aromas come out. So I'm going to, at this point, add a little bit of vino in. I know that looks like a lot, but I need it to help cook down the remaining shallot onion and carrot. So this time I'm going to kick my heat up pretty high and get this to come to a bubble here. And as my wine's reducing and breaking down the onion in there and the carrot and the meat, I may add a little bit more. Okay, so this has been cooking down for about 5 minutes. You can see that the wine's reduced to the consistency that we're kind of looking for. This is the roux you really want for the base of your sauce. I've reduced my heat, so I don't want to burn anything now, and now it's time to add my tomatoes in. So I'm going to carefully pour my tomatoes over the spoon as not to make a mess. Splash up. And then I'm going to get all that mixed in. Okay, so now I just added my pureed up tomatoes in here. I mixed it in with my rouge. I'm going to add a little bit of salt in. Don't put too much salt in right now, because you really don't know how much salt you need until it cooks a little bit further. We're going to cook this for about an hour. When you get about 45 minutes into it, do a little bit of a taste, and then you can salt it from there. But I'm pretty confident with the amount of tomatoes I'm using in here that I can start out with that much salt, and I won't overpower it. So I go ahead and I get that mixed in there. Now I want to add in my fresh oregano and basil that I chopped up earlier. Get all that in there. Scrape a little bit off of there. We don't want to waste any there. And using fresh ingredients like this in a sauce really makes a difference. If you've ever made sauces before, please try, if you haven't used fresh ingredients, please try fresh ingredients, because you'll really appreciate the flavor that you get out of it. And we're going to use the remaining of the garlic that we had saved here, and this will slowly cook with the sauce over the next 60 minutes there, and it'll bring another layer of flavor. So at this point, keep your heat at a low heat. I'll probably turn it lower once I start getting my bubbles coming in my sauce. And I'm slowly just going to keep an eye on this, stirring it every 3 to 5 minutes as the heat goes through it and cooks down. And in about an hour, we'll come back to it and we'll take a look at it, and I'll have my raviolis cooked by then, and we'll serve on up. Okay, I've been cooking down my sauce now. It's been cooking for about an hour. You can see it was up here when I started. It reduced. It's reduced about 35%. That's really what you want to get out of a good sauce, because you want to get all that water out of the tomatoes. It's nice, it's thick, it's got a good consistency. Now if you're worried about all the chunks and stuff in there, you could always filter it through a cheesecloth or something, but since this is going on on ravioli with Italian sausage in it. We kind of wanted a little bit more chunkier, but if you were trying to do something on more refinement, you would just filter it through a cheesecloth. Bon appetit! My sauce is done, raviolis are cooked, and we're getting ready to sit down and eat. Be sure to come back and look at our other videos, as I have many of them we're posting on a weekly basis. Thank you.